Hello, my name is Chris Lankinen, and I'm from Copiosis Finland. And I have a friend here with me who is also very involved in the volunteer work of Copiosis Finland.
Hello everyone, my name is Severi Savukoski. I'm also from Finland and part of the Copiosis Finland team, you could say. And this is our first podcast for those of us listening. And welcome.
Once upon a time, I was a young boy, or actually I was already around my 20s, and I didn't really know what I should do. So I applied for business school, and I got into business school. And I was studying, because I thought this is what everybody has to do, that they have to study and get a diploma and start working. So after 6 years of business school, I was at the end of my studies, and I just decided to go on my second exchange student semester. So I picked Stockholm, which is really close to Finland. And when I came to Stockholm, I was looking for the courses what the university was offering. And I just decided that I don't want to study economics anymore. So I started to study Russian. And then one day, a very good friend of mine from the same city in the north of Finland called me and said, like, come over, I found this cool documentary. So I took my bike and I biked through Stockholm to this suburb where he was living in his student flat. And it was just a simple flat with a few lights and a bed and a laptop and speakers. So then we had a cup of tea and we started to watch a documentary called Zeitgeist Addendum. And after 2 hours of this documentary, something happened in me. Because I just realized that I've been in business school for 6 years, and I learned more from this documentary about how the world is actually working. And ever since, I've been wanting to learn about how societies in the world and how the global economy is working. And of course, I started to read a lot about the Zeitgeist movement's written material, and I watched a lot of movies about the resource-based economy. And I remember when I was doing an internship in Austria, in Innsbruck, I was working in a mushroom company which produces spawn for all Europe. So they ship this mushroom spawn for growers who want to grow their own mushrooms. And I was working with the production of this spawn, and the work was pretty mundane and boring. I don't say all the work was, because I was also in the lab, which was super exciting. And then every lunch break, I went to this place, which is called Silslucht, which is a small river running through Innsbruck. and there's no houses. There's just the river, and it's a cool valley. So I went there with my Zeitgeist book, and I was reading the book. And the more I studied the philosophy of the movement, the more I was convinced that this is the world where I want to live in. The visions what the Peter and Jack was giving was very, very profound and very promising. But then I didn't know what to do. I wanted to tell about this to my friends and talk about the society without money. But it didn't end anywhere. So then 2016, I decided to go to Athens. These people who were very enthusiastic about the discussions. And then there was one American over there who was giving a presentation about the new social system. And what I remember, the presentation was pretty short, and it was a little bit complicated for me as a non-native English speaker. So I still had my small red mushroom book where I wrote down the word copiosis. And then after I came from Athens, from the noisy metropole back to Lapland, so I wanted to find out what this copiosis is all about. And I got super excited about this, that finally there was like a way out of the mess we created. And I read 1 week in a row all the written materials through, and the more I was reading the materials, the more I was convinced that this is the solution for the whole world. And I remember I was like writing this WhatsApp message to a big group about copiosis, and there was like a few persons who replied, but I didn't get depressed by this, and I started a blog in Finland about to bring out this innovation. And I think this is the solution what the world has been waiting for, and everybody is expecting some kind of change, so that the future generations will have a place where they can live safely. So then I've been in contact with the founder, and I want to introduce you to the founder of Copiosis, which I'm really honored to speak with, and I'm super happy that we can have this conversation. So please welcome Perry Gruber to our first podcast of Copiosis Finland.
It's good to be here, and I'm happy that with that introduction, that was really good. It looks like Severi has frozen. Severi, you with us still?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We hear you great, but your picture is frozen.
Oh.
But if we can hear you, that's fine, I think.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead.
Okay. So that was a great story, Chris, about how you came to find out about copiosis.
Yeah, the trip to Athens was directly after I visited eco village in Spain, in Tenerife, and I always wanted to see Peter and meet the all other activists. So I just booked a flight directly to Athens and stayed there for a weekend. And I think that was the very good decision.
Yeah, it was an event that Copiosis was invited to by actually by Peter Joseph, the organizer of that event. Asked Peter who he should invite as speakers to the event, and Peter Joseph had suggested, how about that Perry guy out of Portland who's running Copiosis? And so the organizer contacted me and invited me to come and speak. That's how I got there.
Mm-hmm. So can you, Perry, tell the audience more about yourself? And we would like to know, like what is the reason you started to create a new global system for the people and the planet?
Well, I have always questioned whether or not humanity is living in its best possible form. I have never been satisfied with the status quo in anything. And so I have a reputation for shaking things up. And so as I was growing up, I decided that I wasn't going to live my life the way most people were. My first decision was I would try to make as much money as I could. And in high school, I thought a lot of money was $150,000 a year. And so I thought about what job I could do that would pay that much money. And it took me around 15 years to get to that level of income. But by the time I had gotten to that level of income, I was really dissatisfied with my life experience. I was making a lot of money and doing all the things that that money could afford, but I felt there was something larger I had to do than just make money and enjoy the money I was making. And so I was looking around for things that I could join that could make a huge difference. And one of the beliefs I have is that the biggest difference you can make is the thing that has the most risk or seems like the most impossible to do. And so I was looking for a way that I could have a really big impact on global society. And that's when I met a guy named Larry Mason online, who had the basics of what is now Copiosis. He didn't call it that back then, but he had the basics already figured out. And when I read his material, I just had goosebumps and shivers and almost like a nervous breakdown inside of me, because it felt like this was the thing I meant to do. among the other things that I was doing. And so I studied, like you said, I studied all of his material and eventually asked if I could come and meet him. And so I flew to North Carolina in the United States, where he lives, and spent a day with him talking about copiosis. It wasn't called copiosis then. And at the end of the conversation, I asked him if this is something I could promote around the world. And he said, yeah, go ahead. Just don't use my name. And I didn't understand why he didn't want me to use his name. But I honored his wishes. So for the first 2 years, I did not mention his name. I just talked about the idea. And it slowly started to gain interest. And it was right around the second year that I found out about the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement. Up until then, I did not know what those were. I had never seen the movies or anything. And when I found out about them, I thought that population, that group of people in the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project are the perfect audience for something like what I was calling copiosis. And so I started focusing all of my written promotional material towards that audience. And that's how Copiosis started to become more popular. And that's how we got to Greece.
So, like, when was this when you realized that your life work would become to transfer the current global socioeconomic system into a better one?
Well, that part of my life began when I was meditating as a young person. My spiritual practice influences what I do in this area. And in my spiritual practice, I have seen that I am more than just a physical human being. And because of that, I can do whatever I want to do. And since I recognize that, again, I wanted to do something that would have a huge impact, not just create a company or help people live their lives better inside of capitalism or something like that. I wanted to make a huge difference. And so that's where I thought, well, no one is trying to change the economic system. I'm going to do it. And so and I decided I was going to do it as an expression of of who I am in the world. And so my desire to change the economic system is a reflection of who I am in the world, which is a powerful creative being. Did that answer your question, Chris? Okay. I want to make sure that that I don't get off track.
So in the beginning, did you receive a lot of resistance against your ideas?
Yeah. At first, I got a lot of, the middle part of. So if you look at the human population, you can separate it into sections. And in one section, you have the dreamers. And then in the middle, you have the regular people who have lost their dream. And then on the other side, you have basically the depressed people who are just complaining about the way life is. And my first attempt was to approach that middle group. And people who have lost their dream don't have the capacity to dream. So they don't have the capacity to recognize a good idea when they see one, because often a good idea sounds crazy. But if it's pursued, it becomes less crazy, and over time it becomes more of a possibility. So when I was reaching out to that middle group, which is what I did first, I was reaching a lot of people who lost their ability to dream. And as a result, when they heard my crazy idea, all they could say was, "You're crazy," or "It's a pipe dream," or "Your idea has no place in the real world," or "You're just trying to create utopia and utopias are impossible." So these are the kind of responses I was getting at first. In fact, I was communicating on Reddit, and one guy told me, "You are not the person to even think of such an idea." And that comment, to be honest, was painful. It really hit my ego. Like, he was saying, "Who are you to even think that you can change something that's been around for hundreds of years and has worked so well for so many people? Who are you to think that you have a better idea than what we already have? You're just some puny human being," is how I interpreted his comment. But what my reaction to it after I calmed myself down from feeling insulted was, who am I? I'm an amazing human being, and I can do whatever I want. And that includes changing this system that, in my opinion, is not the best possible system. We can do better. And so all of the early negative comments I got, I took them as like booster rockets, how do you say a different way of saying booster rockets? Like, they even though they were negative, they motivated me even further to do what I was doing. It was almost like the universe was saying, "We're going to make it hard at first, but that difficulty is going to motivate you to work even more." And so that's what happened.
I could ask, you can comment on this if you want. I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Why do you think why is it now the right time for this kind of change? Like, for sure, this can't be like a unique thing. Like, nobody has ever tried to change the society before. Like, what makes this like possible right now? Is it because of like internet and free speech, or I don't know? Do you have any answers or anything to add?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And what I like to say is we're actually a little bit ahead of the right time. And that's good because we need to get our act together. We don't have all the pieces we need to be really effective in communicating the story of copiosis or the potential of copiosis. So in these first few years, and it might be 10 years, we're trying to get the idea refined to where that middle part of the population can really get it. But at the same time, it's the perfect time because I think more people are beginning to question whether or not the current system is the best we can do. I'm not saying that it's terrible. I'm just saying people are beginning to wonder whether we can do better. And we're beginning to see the results of a long-term commitment to this system. And the people, I think, so all of this happens in phases, right? So the really smart, observant people have known that this system is not going to work in the long term. Karl Marx had suggested that capitalism would end up in communism as it failed the older it got. Other more contemporary thinkers have known all along that something would need to change in order for capitalism to continue. But more mainstream people, more commoners, are beginning to see the effects too. And so with wealth disparity becoming greater and the division, not just in wealth, but in political views, becomes wider, and as poverty seems to get worse and our politicians seem to have fewer answers to these really big problems, and as the threat of nuclear conflict increases, as nuclear weapons become more available to unstable political organizations, we're beginning as a global community to wonder whether there is a better way. And yet, the question, when you're standing in the question, it's hard to hear the answer because you're focused on the question. But when you ask the question, it sets the scene for the answer to show up. And at a deeper level, I think human beings have been asking for an alternative to capitalism for a long time, but human beings have been stuck in the question. They cannot conceive of an answer, and so when an answer has shown up, they have not been able to see it. But the problems of society are becoming so stark that people are beginning to actually look for the answer instead of just asking the question. And so because of that, I think the timing is becoming better and better as we move forward.
Yeah, I always thought that you can change people and their behavior, but I tried to get my parents into a little bit more sustainable, and also teaching them a little bit of eating habits, but they never learned it, or then they just were like normal parents and they didn't listen to their son. They wanted to have an authority from outside who tells them. So I've been studying this, like a lot of different movements who want to create change in the world. But what I noticed that most of them want to change it inside capitalism. So one of my heroes is Buckminster Fuller, and he actually changed that. He said that in order to change anything, you need to create a new model that makes the old one obsolete. So isn't that exactly what Copiosis is doing?
Yes. And it begins, that change model of making the old one obsolete is the same thing as saying you have to offer people something better than what they have. And so, like with your parents, there's a lot of reasons why your parents did not choose to follow your excellent advice. But one of them is they really like eating the way they like to eat. And so in the same way, in capitalism, people really like living in capitalism. So you have to offer them something that offers them something better than what they have in capitalism. And one of those, we believe, five of those things are: you don't have to pay for the thing you live in. You don't have to pay for the basic foods that you eat. You don't have to pay for the basic clothing you wear. You don't have to pay for your health care. Let's see, from clothing, shelter. And you don't have to pay for your education. All of those things in this new system are provided to you, kind of like gifts. And so when someone hears that, the immediate reaction they have, because they're in capitalism, is that's impossible. Someone has to be getting screwed. Someone has to be getting hurt by you being able to give me those things for free. And so then we have to explain how, no, there is a way to do that without hurting anybody. But at a deeper level, Chris, there's something else going on. And this is why I am so sure copiosis is going to happen. One person who is connected to all that is in a direct way has the ability to not only change reality, but to change the minds of other people, especially if the person is acting from a place that is in alignment with where all that is wanting things to go. So, as I said before, humanity is already asking for a better idea than what we have. And so I am standing in the knowing that what is being offered through me is the answer to what humanity is asking for. And so long as I stand in that place, humanity will come along. Because I know, based on my experience when I encountered this idea, that all that is wants this to happen. The feeling I received from encountering it, the almost nervous break, I describe it as a nervous breakdown, but it wasn't that. But it was a very physical, emotional connection to the idea. And I felt like the universe telling me, this is the thing that's going to be the future. Make it happen. And so I stand in that in the same way that Moses stood in it when he parted the sea. Now, if you don't believe in the Christian stories, that's okay. It's an analogy. I stand in it in the same way that Elon Musk says, we're going to go to Mars. I stand in it in the same way John F. Kennedy said, the United States will be the first nation on the moon. I stand in it like it's already happened. And because of that, it's already happened. It's just a matter of time before the already happenedness shows up in the physical world. So that's why it's going to happen. And that's why it's in perfect timing, going back to what Severi asked, because it's meant to happen. And so all the things are working, all the situations, the things that I have no control over. So like global warming, Trump becoming president, Brexit, the disaster that's going on, the economic disaster happening in Greece, all of these events that I have no control over are happening to support the greater asking of humanity for something different than what we have. And the more those events happen, the more the human population becomes prepared to accept something like copiosis.
Interesting. So you think we are beginning to see some other alternatives beyond communism, because like traditionally the only alternative to capitalism is communism, and which is why some people, when they think of when they hear of copiosis, they immediately think of communism.
Yes. So that those people who have that reaction are looking backwards and trying to see the future. And so when you're looking backwards, you can't see the future. All you can see is the past. And so when someone says any new idea is communist, they're not looking at the future. But there's a lot of new ideas coming out that are preparing society for this new future. Universal basic income is one. The circular economy is another. The RBE has been around for a long time, and it's been preparing people to accept, to adopt these new ideas. You know, there's I don't know if you saw the article in the Copiosis, the video in the Copiosis social group, where CNBC International did a story about the circular economy. And it profiled a company, it's called Philips company. They make light bulbs. They're already operating as if copiosis exists in some way. Instead of selling their light bulbs, what they do is they lease their light bulbs to companies. The companies pay Philips a fee for the benefit of light. So the companies don't own the light bulbs. They're paying for the benefit of light. And when the light bulbs burn out, Philips goes and takes they don't give the ownership of the light bulbs to the companies. When the lights burn out, instead of the companies throwing the lights away, Philips goes into the companies, takes the lights, replaces them with new ones, brings the old lights back to the manufacturing facility, and they recycle the old lights. That's exactly how it would work in Copiosis. And so, in many ways, you guys, society is already moving in this direction. And every new idea, no matter how small, is preparing humanity to accept this greater idea of a future which looks nothing like the capitalist one we have today.
Yeah, I just thought about this, that because you mentioned the circular economy. So I thought this circular economy and sharing economy were like one of the best ideas out there for a long time before I discovered Copiosis. And the actual reward system in the system is highly rewarding behavior which are inherent in the circular and sharing economy. So do you want to explain us that why we need a reward system which brings out the best behavior of humans, and why is it not possible to directly transform to RBE or circular economy or sharing economy? Because I remember when I saw a speech from a Mexican Indian who was telling that in order to change, our values need to change. But I don't believe that we can change the value of all the people on the planet, especially when over 1 million people cannot even read.
Yeah.
So I really highly think that we also need this reward system.
Yeah, it's interesting because the circular economy and the sharing economy are great ideas that solve one of the problems of our current system. But it doesn't solve, in my opinion, the biggest problem, which is the negative effects of money. So if you have a circular economy, even if you have a circular economy where everyone is doing the right thing relative to manufacturing, where the manufacturers are owning their products from the time that they're made until the time that they're thrown away, you're still rewarding people with money. And money has three characteristics that cause the problems that we see. Money is uncontrollable. In other words, you can't control what people do with it. Secondly, money is lost, destroyed, or in other ways it's able to be taken from you against your will. And number three, it's inherently amoral. So those things allow people to do things with money that cause much of our problems. For example, with money, you can set up a social system that prevents people from learning how to read. You can pay people to enforce policies that make it difficult for certain people to vote. You can use money to addict people to drugs and other substances. You can even use money to motivate people to kill other people in all kinds of ways. So whether you have a circular economy or a sharing economy or some other sort of economic system, even communism and socialism, as long as you're exchanging goods and services for money, you're creating a lot of problems at the same time that you're creating the benefit through a circular economy or a socialist system or a communist system. Because those systems have no ability to control something that's uncontrollable, which is money. So you have to create a replacement for money. And that replacement has to have none of the characteristics that money has. It has to be controllable. It can't be used to create negative outcomes. And it can't be transferred in secret, like you can do with money. And so that's why we created this reward system based on this concept called net benefit, and the unit of reward called net benefit reward that functions much differently than money does. It doesn't have any of the problems that money has, and it is only rewarded when you do something that creates a net benefit, which is a positive result that outweighs the negative results of that same action. Did that answer your question?
No, me neither.
But the critique what I get most of Copiosis is that most of the people, they think it's too complex and difficult to measure and reward all human activity worldwide. So how would you compare the complexity of this task to today's global free market capitalism?
Well, first of all, capitalism is already measuring all human behavior worldwide that capitalism considers valuable. It doesn't measure human behavior worldwide that capitalism does not believe is valuable. So, we already know that we can measure a lot of human activity. Is capitalism complicated because of that? Yes, it is. Running capitalism is very complicated. But we do it, and everybody participating in capitalism is being rewarded with money. In order to reward people with money, you have to measure their actions. Otherwise, how are you rewarding them? So, capitalism already is measuring people's actions worldwide, and everybody's getting a reward because of it. How is Copiosis different?
Is it different?
I'm gonna suggest that it's a tiny bit different. It's a little different because Copiosis is measuring. So in Copiosis, all human activity is valuable. And so all human activity, the results of all human activity need to be measured. But in capitalism, there is not one organization that is measuring all of human activity that capitalism considers valuable, right? In my town, for example, there are hundreds of thousands of employers, and each of them are responsible for measuring the people in their organizations and rewarding those people. And that process is replicated, it's repeated all over the world. So there's not one entity that is responsible for measuring all of human actions. All of human actions are being measured in these small bytes, if that makes sense. So in the same way, in Copiosis, yes, there is a payer organization that is measuring human activity, but they're being supported by millions of people who are working alongside other people who are measuring those people's behavior and rewarding them by giving input to the algorithm. So it's no more complicated than capitalism is. It's just that there's more measuring going on. But it doesn't mean that the payer organization is doing all the measuring. There are lots of other people that are measuring, just like today. It's not just capitalists who are doing the measuring. It's all kinds of people who are measuring and all kinds of people who are rewarding. In Copiosis, what's happening is all kinds of people are measuring, but only one entity is rewarding, and that's the algorithm. Not a central planning organization like communism or socialism. It's a machine, much like the Bitcoin blockchain. So does the Bitcoin blockchain system a communist system? Because there are algorithms and there's a machine, a networked system of machines worldwide that is calculating the value of coins that are mined? Of course not. It's a distributed network of nodes cooperating to make the system called the blockchain that is Bitcoin operate. In the same way, Copiosis is a distributed network of what? Of human beings that are interacting with other human beings and populating the algorithm with the data we need to reward human actions when they happen. So yeah, it's a little bit different, but it's no more complicated than capitalism or communism or any other economic system.
So even though this innovation is actually at this initial stage, so your trust in Copiosis is very solid. So what kind of advice would you give to people when they're really down and they don't see their highest potential as creators? So in other words, how does a person hold on to his dream no matter how big it is?
Yeah. My confidence in Copiosis is absolute. And it comes from knowing it comes from knowing. It comes from a deep understanding of where I came from and the validity of that origin, and knowing that that's where Copiosis comes from, and knowing that what I say as a creator is what happens, and just knowing that. So for people who are trying to create something and have trouble with doubt or belief that what they're doing is going to work, you have to find a way to connect with that part of you that knows, that has no doubt. And in my opinion, the way to connect with that part of you, the only way, is through some sort of spiritual practice. You have to have a spiritual practice because that's where everything is coming from anyway. And this is one of the challenges that I have with some of the more popular organizations in this space, is they assert that the spiritual realm does not exist. And when you come from that belief, you're on shaky ground because you're left with believing only what you can see with your eyes, or hear with your ears, or touch with your fingers, or taste with your tongue. And when you're left with only that, it's easy to go into doubt because you don't understand where the things that are physical come from. And so those who doubt are those who only can see the physical world. And the physical world comes from someplace. And where it comes from is a place of no doubt. And that's where I come from. And so I have no doubt. I mean, I have doubt sometimes. Every once in a while I have a little bit of doubt. But then I just reconnect. And then I have no doubt. And everybody has access to that. I'm not special. Everyone has access to what I'm talking about. But first you have to believe that it's there. That's the first step. And then the rest of it just comes naturally. You know, when we're kids, when we're little kids, we don't have any doubt. We believe. We are pretending when we play, when we pretend that we're army men, or we play that we're astronauts, we have no doubt when we're doing that. We actually believe as children that we're astronauts. You know, Jesus, I'm not a Christian, but Jesus says to inherit the kingdom of God, you have to believe as a child. And that's what I'm talking about.
I can hear some kids on the background.
Yeah, my wife, her preschool is at recess. And so the kids are out believing in their play. They're out there playing and they believe. So it's a nice reminder.
But the actual same place where you connect daily, it also contains a lot of bliss.
Yes, it does. It is a
and it seems like the answers are coming from, all the answers are coming from this place.
That's right. So here's the thing. I don't have all the answers about how to make copiosis happen. But I don't need all the answers. I only need the answers that I need right now. Like how to do this podcast with you. How to make sure that I show up on time. All the other answers that I will need in the future will come to me in the future. And that solves a lot of doubt. If you believe that you have to have all the answers now to create something that will eventually be in the future, then of course you're going to have doubts because you can't have all the answers right now. You only get the answers that you need right now. But where did those answers that you need right now come from? They came from the same place that the future answers will come. And so going through the process of making something real is part of the process of giving up doubt. Because through the process, you learn that all the answers you need come in perfect timing. It's like, Chris, when you showed up, I didn't know you. I didn't know that you would become passionate about copiosis and that you would basically become the European leader of copiosis. But you showed up at the right time. And I had belief that something like that would happen. And now here we are, not just you, but Severi too. And all the other people that are following copiosis in the way that they're following it. This is how it happens. It happens gradual, like grass growing, or like a dog growing from a puppy to a dog. It happens gradual, and you don't see it happening until the puppy has become a dog. And then you go, wow, you grew up fast. And so in the same way, people will look at copiosis when it's become real, and they'll say, wow, that happened overnight. And in reality, it took like 20 years or something like that.
But you know why I like copiosis the most?
Why?
And because the reward system is creating all the answers.
Yes. Yes. It's interesting because we don't have copiosis now, but in the same way, as Copiosis' reward system works, I am being rewarded by focusing on the right things, right? So as I focus on Copiosis and the implementation of it, I receive the reward of people like you showing up, or being invited to Greece, or having this millionaire offer this $5 million prize, or having this other guy offering $100,000 to support Copiosis. And so, yes, there is a reward system, and as long as I continue to do what I believe to be the right thing, I will continue to receive the reward, which is the result of Copiosis becoming a reality. This is how everything works, not just Copiosis.
I agree. I think we are almost 1 hour.
Yep.
Should we start closing up?
Yes.
Do you, Perry, know when you have this political campaign and there's the interviewer is asking questions and you have 5 minutes time to answer these questions? So I made up a few questions and we could close up with these questions. And we set the timer on 4 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Is that cool?
Yes.
Okay. So, why is Copiosis the best global solution out there?
Because the universe has said so.
And why should we put all our effort to make Copiosis into reality?
You should only put the effort forward to make Copiosis a reality if you believe it is the best system available.
What would you do if you knew this would be your last day?
Me personally, I would do what I'm doing.
Talking with 2 guys from Finland?
Yep.
Are you sure, man?
Yep, and having a great time. Yes. Yes.
How would the world be different when no one would need to earn a living? You cannot make that in 4 minutes, man.
Oh my gosh, it would be so amazing. It would be so freeing. It would be so magnificent. People living their passion, people doing things that inspires them, and as a result of that, society getting better and better, and the planet getting better and better, and individual lives getting better and better, with happiness increasing more and more, and conflict decreasing less and less. And it would be I just can't, words don't even, they don't get close enough.
Did you, Maverick, do you want to close up this podcast?
Yeah, I can. Well, it has been very nice talking to you. I think we achieved what we came to achieve. I want with this podcast to have a good conversation and make some points clear, and maybe let's see, we might continue this podcasts in like there were so many things that we didn't even get to.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk for hours, I guess, but I think this 1 hour podcast is maybe for now quite good concept. So let's see what happens in the future, but thank you on my part.
My pleasure. It was fun to have the conversation.
It was an honor.
Yeah. Bye, you guys.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Don't hang up, you guys.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Okay, that was good. Oh, Chris.
Oh, wow. Chris went.
Yeah, Chris went.